it's in your socials, it's there. Mark, you want to remind us about today's proverb?
Now, first,
you guys are doing a doozy on me. You were here and then you were there. Now you're there and then you're here.
You know, tukilisema tucheze piki piki po.
Key.
Pakamye?
Mielo disco.
Thank you very much.
Sawa basi.
So, I have met only 2 people from Eswatini, right? And one of the most scary facts about this country, you want to take a guess?
One of the scary ones.
Scariest things about this country.
About Eswatini? Sijui.
Dennis?
Situambie tu.
Take a guess.
They have beautiful women.
That goes without saying.
Yeah, so
But is that scary?
That's
Pretty women, you scare
Aseto.
So please reduce your beauty.
Wow.
Well, the most scary thing is that the HIV rate now stands at 25.9%, which means 1 out of every 4 people in Eswatini has the HIV virus. Yes, very sad. No comments.
It is very sad. Misery loves company.
When a gorilla is in power, the monkeys are happy. Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
Do you know that
you'll get something.
Yeah, the other way of looking at it is if you find a gorilla in power, perhaps you should consider being a monkey.
Yeah, play ball.
Or marry a gorilla.
Yes.
Or something.
Yeah.
At the very least. Power by association is one of those things that
yes.
I talk about.
Well, we've heard that wives are making government decisions in this country. So yeah. Office of the first governoress.
Spouse of the governor.
Gubernatorial spouse.
Yeah. So they campaigned together. It's okay. Come as a park.
Yes, and you know the good book says, and 2 shall become
one.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this morning we are having a conversation around what should actually be the protections of people who are activists or lobbyists or who go into different circles when they fight as human rights activists. Of course, the story that grabbed the headlines and that which grabbed the screens yesterday was that of Bonafide Mongi and Agatha Atuhaire yesterday as they gave their horrifying details of torture in Tanzania. And many things have come into the fray this morning, and that is the conversation that we're having, as uncomfortable as it would be. And we know that there are many folks who use other mechanisms for deflection, that it is an uncomfortable situation. It is difficult for you to fathom that another individual went through this kind of torture or went through this kind of issue, whether it is alleged or not, that it is difficult to fathom in your minds that this was done to another human being. So as uncomfortable as it is for any of us to fathom it, it's a conversation that we must have. Whether you come from the place that this was all made up, or whether you come from the place that this is actually something that happened, we need to talk about it. We also need to talk about the role that those who sit in certain offices have when it comes to the protection of its people wherever they go, whatever it is that they do. If they're breaking the law, there are systems that have been set up to ensure that individuals will be dealt with. Now, Bonafide Mongi, who we know for the longest time has been an activist, was in Tanzania at the mid towards the end of May. Agatha Atuhaire is a lawyer and journalist activist who is from Uganda. They did make an attempt to be in Tanzania for the trial of Tundu Lissu. They were arrested, not at the airport. They were not taken at the airport. They actually were able to leave the airport and they went to their hotel.
Yes.
On the first night, Bonafide Mongi, according to the reports that he gave, there were folks who came to see him past midnight. They said that they were security officers. Rather, the security of the hotel escorted them to his room, and they said that they wanted to have a word with him. He refused, and for some reason or other, they left that night. Yeah. The next day, while they were having a meal in preparation for him to go to Uganda, he went to the restroom, and that is where they met him. He tried to scream to bring some attention to what was happening, and in the eating area, the restaurant area of the hotel, he was then taken. He made a call to some Tanzanian activists that he knows. He also made a call to those who accompanied him on the journey to let him know that this is what happened. the same fate would have befallen Agatha Atuhaire. And they then gave their horrifying recount of the things that happened to them. Now, remember, they were taken on the 18th of May, 19th of May, 20th of May, 21st of May, 22nd of May for Boniface, 23rd of May for Agatha. They tell us about the things that happened to them over those 4 days for Boniface and 5 days for Agatha. We are told about torture where the beatings were merciless. We are told about playing music so that their screams could not be heard. We're also told of sexual torture and sexual assault that happened to both of them during this time. They're told about threats that were made to them. They're also told about recordings that were made while these things were happening, and the threats that were made that if they were ever to set foot in Tanzania again, they would not be tortured, they would not be beaten, but they would be killed. And it was very clear that these messages were coming to them. These are things that were said in public yesterday. These are allegations, because we're still going to call them that.
Yeah.
That these were allegations that were made by these two individuals against individuals in Tanzania. They named the police officers who were there because they didn't hide their names, neither did they hide their identities. They named these people. And first of all, we can deal with a series of things. The horrific nature of the descriptions that they gave of things that happened to them, if that is anything to go by, first of all, we're not even talking about should it or should not have happened, for whatever the case. And then we talk about the fact that there was security command there in place. We also talk about the fact that they were dumped in their respective countries, so there was no question that they were aware who they were and where they came from. What has surprised people a lot more from all of this is the resounding silence that we then hear from the institutions and departments of government, which are tasked with the responsibility to ensure that their people are safe, especially when it comes to dealings with another nation, more so a neighboring one with whom you have had cordial relations for the longest time. You are part of a community together. Should this have happened to another individual, another human being? Absolutely not. But for me, what makes this worse, if we're dealing on allegations, what makes the wound deeper? What makes it bleed more? What makes the experience that more harrowing is the silence that is met by the institution. And I'm putting this right at the floor of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that this thing could happen and two individuals have come back to the country, to their countries, one in Kenya, one in Uganda, and we're not asking questions. We are not saying, come on guys, this cannot happen to another human being. But we are silent about it. And I keep saying, our human value barometer is set too low. I don't care what they went to do. This thing that happened to them should not happen to another human being. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter where they are. This happened to people, and the silence with which it is met is unfortunate.
You know, sometime back in Tanzania, there was a young lady who purportedly had an affair with a senior official in Tanzania. And there was a disagreement, okay? And this disagreement happened. There was certain security officials who were sent to quote-unquote teach her a lesson. There were about 6 men. And they sodomized her. And as though that was not enough, the video of her being sodomized was circulated. This person was not a minister. He was not a general. He was just senior enough, the security forces, to be able to issue an order that this young lady, not much older than 21, was sodomized by 6 army officials. And unless there was public backlash, they had gotten away scot-free. I say this to say that for me, those are not allegations. Boniface Mongi, I believe you. And I'm willing to stand by your word because I have seen this being done to people, not once, not twice. The level of inhumanity that is meted upon people in our neighboring countries in the name of political expediency, in the name of stabilizing the country, is ridiculous. By the time a president of the caliber of Yoweri Museveni comes up and says that we're sorry for atrocities, he's not joking. There are atrocities. And there are atrocities meted upon people who simply want to give alternative voices or even voices to the people which the people feel hurt by. Let's not forget that Tunde Lissu himself has been shot.
16 times.
Yes, been brought to Nairobi to get healthcare. Tunde Lissu, this is not the first time he's being arrested. He's been arrested many times. And each time for spurious reasons. I don't doubt this too. I don't.
You see, I will speak from a position of, as a man, right? There's some things as men that are very difficult to talk about. When you see someone like Boniface Mongi, let's stop looking at Boniface Mongi as an activist that he is, but as a father, as a husband, and as someone's child. And a Kenyan citizen for that matter, whose only crime was to go to Tanzania to stand with someone he calls a friend. And that is not wrong because it has happened before. Emeritus Chief Justice Maraga was in court as well to see a friend. Boniface Mongi was taken in by the cops from his room. He was already in the country. Had he committed any crime in Tanzania? No. He was taken in, was interrogated, and even the Kenyan ambassador to Tanzania told him that he would be deported back to Kenya. We all know deportation processes. All they do is they take you to the nearest airport, put you in the next flight, and send you back home. That is not what happened to Boniface Mongi. Boniface Mongi tells us how one Faustin Jackson Mafuele was there when he was being beaten and even threatened to rape him. These are words of one Boniface Mongi. And as Ndu, you say, there is a resounding silence from the ministry. Let's not forget in televised interview where the Cabinet Secretary Foreign Affairs, who has been donated power by one Boniface Mongi, who is a Kenyan, who went to vote, the reason why he's in that office, was mishandled in Tanzania. But the Cabinet Secretary Foreign Affairs says Boniface Mongi imported or exported bad manners to Tanzania. That is the person who's in charge of making sure that Kenyans, including Mogaka, who we had here in the morning, squarely lie under his office. If we hear the likes of the Iyala Member of Parliament that we had here, equally resound and reverberate the bad manners that was allegedly exported to Tanzania, tell me again, what crime did Boniface Mongi commit for him to be arrested, first of all? And anything else that happened to Boniface Mongi should never happen to anybody in any country, anywhere in the world. Because human rights are clear. If Tanzania is a signatory to human rights laws, what makes them think that they can break it?
You know, let's start here. And let me speak to the Ministry Foreign Affairs, and indeed to my good friend, the Yala MP. Let's start here. Yes, I absolutely agree that Tanzania has a very strange political culture, right? That I agree with 100%. I also agree with the fact that the situation in Tanzania post Magufuli, you do need to go there working on your tippy toes. I will not by any means make people think and believe today that you can go to Tanzania and not be picked up for lesser reasons than this. Let's just set that clear, because I think it is also important to inform Kenyans about the dangers they face. I'm not saying what Tanzania is doing is right, but I'm just telling you, sometimes when you go to the Romans, do as the Romans do. Because to be honest with you, that's why I started with the story of that girl. I'm telling you, it is one of the most horrific things you'll ever see in your life. And if what they did to Akina Boniface is a quarter of what they did to that lady, it is too much. But now we have a problem. We have a problem where we know there's a country that is willing to go rogue with your human rights. Now we come back to the ministry. So, your people went. Maybe you didn't like it. Fine. But they're your people. They're your people. You don't need to agree with them. They don't need to have gone and ate their food with the picky in their air and drank their tea with crumpets. No. Let me tell you. Remember the lady who was being hung, actually, Juicy, for drug possession. Didn't we cry for her?
We did.
Didn't we cry for her?
Was there no intervention?
No, in fact, was she importing bad manners?
Yes.
She was.
In a place where it is known very clearly that if you do have anything to do with drugs, there's no question.
Yes. Yeah.
You will go to jail for life or
they'll
you will be hung.
Yes. So that lady who was guilty as sin, we defended.
Remember the gentleman who equally killed someone in Saudi Arabia, and the Kenyan government took that conversation and reparation was paid to the family.
Because the right thing to do is what we used to do as kids. I can beat my sister at home when we are playing, but you try to beat her in school, I'll beat you. Let us understand each other. We are Kenyans first. For me, the question of whether they were exporting bad manners or not is immaterial.
It is immaterial.
It is totally immaterial. Boniface Mongi, we are 100% behind you on this one.
Dear Mr. President, I don't think there's a question here about what needs to be done when Kenyans, whom have, delegated their power to you, to then be able to protect them. Yeah. The silence is too loud over this particular issue, as has been too loud over other issues when it comes to the rights of Kenyans and how they should or should not be disappeared, tortured, or even worse, killed. That it shouldn't have to take somebody to give a personal testament about what happened to them in 4 days of torture for something to come out into the open. It doesn't take that, dear Mr. President. It doesn't take somebody to have to relive the horror of 4 days in darkness, blindfolded, tortured, beaten, sexually abused. It doesn't take that for silence to then be lifted. It doesn't take that. That you've delegated responsibility to somebody in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to have these conversations, to condemn certain actions, to at the very least want to know what happened. The silence is loud, and unfortunately, people are starting to believe you when you don't do something about that in terms of how you care about them. So the question is, do you care about the Kenyan citizen, dear Mr. President? And if you're silent about these things that have happened through your people whom you've appointed, then people are going to believe whether you care about them or not.
And you see, when you bring up the question of care, the president, while giving an apology, apologized to Tanzania for allegedly what Kenyans did. The only person who's not had the president address them is Boniface Mongi. You see, when we sit and we look at human life and the value that we place on human life, we continue to ask this question every day. What value really do we place on human life? Because we've seen it happen, yet Kenyans disappear. We've seen Kenyans being abused outside this country. We are silent about it. Life continues normal. The least the government would have done, the least the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would have done, the security agencies, is when Boniface Mongi landed into this country, first of all, take him to hospital. Take him in, ask him what happened, find out the true action. What really happened to Boniface Mongi that he did not have to come out in the glare of cameras to explain, because the government that ought to have done that failed to ask.
Aseto, first he did have to. I'll tell you why he had to come out in the media. Why was Martha Karua treated different? Because she's Martha Karua. The only way you can protect yourself is by actually coming out public. That's the only way. And it takes a lot of courage to describe the kind of horrors that Boniface went through. So it takes bravery. But the thing here is this. The truth is that until we grow up to such a point that we can defend our enemies, fine. Boniface Mongi was part of the Gen Z riots. Fine. He's known to have opposed every regime from Kibaki all the way to Ruto today. Fine. You might consider him your worst enemy since Hitler. Fine. But true leadership is taking care of your enemies as well. True leadership is realizing that he's one of the Kenyans you swore to protect. Is realizing that he's got every right that all of your fanatics have. Every right. And the fact that we are a country that cannot take action about this issue, raise a question in the UN, raise a question at The Hague, raise a question at the East African Court of Justice, raise a question through the Foreign Affairs. There are so many avenues by which the state can act. Now, my worry is if we do not act now. When they came for Boniface, I did not speak.
Yeah.
Soon they'll come for me. I have a flight there very soon. Who will defend me if this conversation is hard?
This is the thing that I think we need to get to the point where we're asking, then really what does it mean for Kenyans looking forward? We must understand that RECs play a very, very large role when it comes to regions of the countries, of the continent, for sure. Does this sour relations in any way? Number one. But I don't even want to go to that area where we talk about what happens at the regional level. That coming back to Kenya, what does it mean then for the protection of its people? Are you safe here? Are you safe abroad? And that's the question. 27 minutes to 10 o'clock. We're going to come back and look into this just a little bit deeper. That there are, and you know why we call, and the questions coming in on our comments, why do we call them allegations? Because we, at this point, before anything does go, we know that there's some cases that have already been filed at the courts of justice. We know that has already happened. And it is one man's rendition. And unfortunately, it's sad to say, but it's one man's rendition. It's one woman's rendition. And then you really do have to give this the opportunity to both sides. That's why we call them allegations. Just because, you know, you have to stay on the right side of legal. It's sad, but we are bound to do that. We're going to continue with this conversation when we come back from this break. Like I said, it's an ugly one. It's an uncomfortable one, but it must be had. At 26 minutes to 10, we'll be back after this. Don't go away. Both of these harrowing ordeals had everything to do with assault. It had everything to do with torture, beatings, psychological torture, and, of course, threats to their life and livelihoods, both now and in the future. And the question is, it's not a funny ordeal. It's not funny at all. And it's not anything that somebody can take lightly. But I want to ask a question that has really bothered me as I thought about it ever since the day that we heard that they were missing. And then when we heard that they had then been dumped and then they made their way back to their countries respectively. Why didn't we see or hear any pre-chagrin, surprise issues from the Kenyan government about their Boniface Mongi who had gone missing? Why didn't we hear anything to that effect? Why didn't we hear thoughts of questions asked about these allegations that were being made and nobody asked questions about what happened? And nobody should tell me that maybe something happened behind closed doors. I won't buy that, because we have just in the recent past seen things that were happening with Kenyan citizens in other parts of the world for which the questioning was very public, for which things like this didn't happen, for which a man killed another man and a bloodletting needed to happen, and there were very many calls from the government, for which a woman who had already been found guilty of drug trafficking in another country and was going to be hanged, we saw the intervention of government in a very public manner. So in this case, when an individual in the company of others went to show solidarity as an activist with somebody in another country, and this, look, political nuance and unsaid things notwithstanding, and tradition when it comes to political behavior notwithstanding, these things that are said to have happened to him, why do we not see an interrogation of these issues in just a public as a manner as happened in other cases? Why? Why don't we see that?
You know, there was a guy who was taken from Kenya, Kizza Besigye.
Kizza,
Boniface Mongi is equally taken in Tanzania. We must consider that this could be a coalition of the willing. I shall not elucidate.
Don't elucidate, because then again, if 1 + 1 is 2, not 11, bro. Because at the end of the day, when you sit down and look at the happenings in the region, look at Kizza Besigye abducted in the country, driven all the way from Nairobi all the way to Uganda, Kenyan government silent. Look at Boniface Mongi, whatever happened to him in Tanzania, the Kenyan government silent. You know, one has to ask the question, why is it that at the center of these all, the governments that are there seem to be silent or appear to be condoning what it is that is happening to the citizens of the region?
I don't see that things are in a good place.
They can't be, they're not.
Because I often find myself going back to my dictionary or even like practice or experience, and I ask myself, when we talk about a democratic space, what exactly does that mean? Because all of the countries that we talk about, everybody now takes that democracy and democratic and throws it around the place as though you're passing out hot dogs at the state fair. You know, democratic this, democratic that. Everybody talks about that. But are we really? Let's use a different word, because if we're not, then we are not. And I still say that there is no justification under the sun for anything that you would then do this kind of behavior to another human being. And beyond the politics, beyond the regional politics, beyond who is running for president or not running for president, beyond who was annoyed because an activist was jumping up and down saying certain things about how your governance needs to be questioned or things about you need to be put in check. Put all of those things aside. And I'm saying today that it is about time. That barometer we talk about, when it talks about human values, we need to check it. If it has a problem, a mechanical fault, we need to sort it out. Because the minute that you see and hear things like this, and it doesn't touch you to want to do something about it, we have lost it. We have lost it, and there is no political, there is no economic, there is no developmental, there is nothing that you will do to make anybody believe you if such a thing doesn't touch you. You cannot come and say tomorrow you want to lead. You cannot come tomorrow and say tomorrow you want to justify. If something like that doesn't touch you and you raise your voice to ask a question about what happened and demand that the person who put this other individual through a situation like that then must answer in one way or another. If you don't ask that question, we have a bigger problem than economics. We have a bigger problem than governance. We have a bigger problem than money. We have a bigger problem than organization and coming together as regional bodies. We have a human value problem, and that goes to the very core of the matter. If we are comfortable and we can go about our business listening to and seeing such harrowing tales of what other human beings went to, we have a very big problem, and that is what needs to be dealt with. This one, it is beyond just standing in front of a podium and saying 1, 2, 3. Yeah. It's beyond sending your people to go. If we can't be touched, be moved in any way that something like this has happened to another human being, and I'm talking about the victim. I've not even started to talk about what has happened to the individuals who inflicted this on others, because they too are not okay.
Yeah.
If we cannot deal with those issues, and I'm preaching, but I sit in a place where my job is to share. I sit in a place where my job is to share information. That's what I was trained to do, to give out information in a way that will allow us to have a conversation. If I sit in a position where I share information the way I do on a daily basis, and I cannot be in touch with the humanity of things, we have a problem. If we govern without humanity, if we lead without humanity, if we engage without humanity, if our values are in the dustbin, no amount of money is going to solve the problem.
You know, Ndu, let me just speak to my president, upon whom the buck stops. Let me speak to Mudavadi, where there's another backstop. Let me also speak to the Law Society of Kenya, whom can file a case at the East African Court of Justice, and ask them this. Do you realize that this is an opportunity to make things right? Do you realize that if we took a step back as a country, and came together to care for Bonafide Mongi, let's put our political leanings aside. Let's put even his history, if you don't like it, put it aside. And can we just, for once, stand for our own? I don't see any difficulty at all in writing an official letter to the government of Tanzania asking for these 6 or 12 people who abused these people. I don't see a problem or a difficulty or an issue with the head of police in this country using the Interpol connection to ask for these criminals to be presented. Because whether we like it or not, these people who did this are criminals.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
It is not a matter of Tanzania. You know, Tanzania is a big country. They are criminals who did criminal acts upon our Bonafide Mongi. I don't see a difficulty at all in the police, the DCI, wherever you want to call them, writing and saying, we want these people.
You see, Mark.
Let me finish. 3, there's nothing stopping this country from taking action, diplomatic action, such as recalling our ambassador until this matter is settled. What I'm simply saying is, it is not for shortage of opportunity or legal ways to handle this that it's not being handled.
No, it isn't.
And I'm sorry I'm raising my voice, but listen, even if you want to look at this thing politically, and you want to bridge the gap with Gen Z as we preached during Madaraka Day, where do you think you need to start, other than right here, other than making this right? Because for once, Bonafide Mongi was not arrested on the streets even. As in, come on, guys. As in, I know, please drop your jubileeless, your LCCG, your all those things of yours, and think that this is an opportunity. Even if you are thinking solely politically, this is an opportunity for you even to get those political points you're looking for. Seriously. As in, it is incredulous that we have to sit here shouting our voices hoarse because you refuse a thing that is not only good for Boli, but it's also good for you. Which Kenyan will complain and say, oh, you went to defend Boli, now I'm not going to vote for you.
Come for crying out loud.
You see, Mark,
As in, come on.
Kenyans have spoken. Kenyans have stood with Boni. The only people who've let Boni down is the government of Kenya. Simply because so far, no ambassador has been recalled, no ambassador has been suspended.
Even answering.
Even answering. You know, these are questions that are being asked. And we talk about human life. We talk about human decency. We talk about rights of each and every single person. Whatever happened to Boni, when you talk about this man called, I'll call you by his name, Faustin Jackson Mafuele, and threatening Boni that we've recorded you and we will share these things just so we can embarrass you.
Please do.
The embarrassment
It's done.
is done. The only person you're embarrassing here is you and your damn government. Because when you talk about Boni, what was his crime in Tanzania? None. He kept asking the police officers in Tanzania in charge of investigations, what is my crime? They have not done that. The government of Kenya, it is time to do right by Boni. Same way we apologize to Tanzania. Boni, deserves to be done right by, and Boni deserves justice. Whichever way you want to look at it.
Let's take a
Justice
call.
to
Let's
Boni.
take a call from somebody. We're taking a few calls as we do this morning. 0719-012-600. We'll take your calls this morning as we look into some of these issues. And, why haven't we heard the voice? You've been on hold for a minute. Very good morning to you. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good morning. Tell us your name and where you're calling in from.
Yes, good morning, and thank you so much. Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Bichache. My name is Gian Wahome. I'm calling from Nairobi. I'm
Yes.
a youth leader in Nairobi, and thank you for having this conversation. And it's so sad that Kenyan citizen who went to show solidarity with an opposition leader that is only calling for electoral reforms in that country, that our people went through such order. But the saddest part of it, my dear sister, is the government of Kenya was a collaborator in all this. I'm saying this because we saw a parliament in Tanzania debate this issue. And we even had legislators talk of even raping one Mother Karua. So this is part and parcel of how they do things. And this should call us, this should really worry us as a region. Kenya is a country that has a new constitution. Kenya is a country that I know we can't compare it in terms of democracy with Tanzania and Uganda. But when our security agencies, because I'm saying this because this, remember, even happened in Mombasa. There is a guy who went through what Boni has gone through, and he accused the sitting governor of the same. I'm really asking this because there is a time the sitting president of Kenya was indicted by the ICC, and we saw leaders in this country board aeroplanes to the ICC to go and show solidarity. What is so wrong with Boni and others going to Tanzania to go and show support? We are living in very, very interesting and desperate times. And the only thing I can urge and pray to my brother Bonifide Mongi Agala is that Kenyans and East Africa solemnly support everything they have done for these nations. We will continue supporting them, and I thank them for the courage they have come out and spoken about it, because the enemy wanted to silence them. We are also praying to Kenya and more to the DNT. We will keep the momentum.
Well, homie, I'm going to need you to move a little bit because we seem to have lost your sound. All right. So thank you very much for that call this morning. I mean, just looking into some of these matters, important for us to do so. And the call is very clear that we're saying there needs to have been an answer. I just want to say something, and I think that's important. We're not talking about something that is far-fetched in terms of what you actually can or cannot do. That there are nations on this planet whereby the minute they hear that any of their citizens has been taken for whatever reason, they say, give us back our person, and then you can ask questions later. They have signed into governance acts which say, for our people, because we realize that our first duty is to keep them safe, we're going to ask you that if they happen to be in your country for whatever reason, let us have them, give them back to us first, right? And then let's ask questions later. Let us be the ones, if we need to discipline them, or take them to court or anything like that. So it is very possible to do. We're not talking about something that is far-fetched. We're going to take a few more calls from you this morning. Bonifide Mongi is online, and we want to hear a few words from him this morning. Hello, Bonnie, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. I am all right. Very shaken, but I can't imagine what you must be going through. We just want to ask, how are you as well?
I'm surviving. It's tough for me mentally, and I have a lot of wounds that are healing, so it's going to take a while before I'm back on my feet.
Those are physical wounds, but I would imagine that the ones that we can't see would be a lot deeper.
There's a lot of mental anguish and pain.
Why did you come out yesterday, Bonnie, to say exactly what happened to you? Why did you and Agatha decide to do that?
So they were capitalizing on our silence. They told us that we were going to be shamed, and the guilt of what happened to us was going to be like a cross we carry for the rest of our lives. And we thought about it, and we realized that if we don't speak, we're going to be giving them power, because they'll have actually achieved their goal, and their goal was to silence us forever. So we decided to share what happened to us. But even if I shared, Agatha had already gone public about what happened to her. And for me, I was just trying to find solidarity with Agatha for me to be able to speak it. Because when I came back from Tanzania rather, I shared with my family the first day I arrived and said, I don't want to talk about this with anyone else, and let's end it there. But I had to go to hospital. I had to go to theater for some checks. And so I said, let me come public about what happened to me and to us.
First and foremost, Pole sana, as in my heart breaks for you. I am incredibly sorry. I cannot express how sorry we are. How would you like to be supported, both from the public and from the government side? Because you are ours, and we owe you our loyalty, our help, and also to be able to bring back dignity and justice to what happened to you.
Asante. So there's a bigger conversation, because I was told that Tanzanians use sexual violence as a weapon to silence people. So I think there's a need to have a larger conversation about other victims who are silent, who can't speak about it, and have the Tanzanian government investigated for such crimes. I think the other thing you can help me is help me find justice and get justice. Our government failed me, because our government knew that I was in the Tanzanian authorities' hands, and they said nothing about it. And actually, the only apology that came from Kenya was the Kenyan government and our foreign affairs minister apologizing to the Tanzanian government. I think furthermore, and I've said this, I have said that I would like my medical reports to be made public. I've asked the foreign affairs, go to Nairobi hospital where I was treated. My medical reports are there, all the injuries, and there's also independent medical reports of what happened to us, so that Kenyans can know the level of brutality that went through in the hands of Tanzanian government. So justice is all we need now. And I hope that our pain was not in vain, that Tanzanians are going to get liberated from the shackles of Suluhu's evilness and dictatorship.
Bonnie, we talk about the Tanzanian authorities coming to your hotel and picking you up. I know you asked them what your crime was, and no one really seemed to have that answer. What were they saying? Why did they pick you up?
There was no chargeable crime, so I did not break any Tanzanian law. I think what they were afraid of, and it has actually happened, was us exposing the sham case of Tundu Lissu. So the reason why we went other than many others were going to the country was trying to bring publicity to the case that is going on in Tanzania about Tundu Lissu is the main opposition leader. He's in jail. His party has been banned. And I think they were trying to avoid being embarrassed internationally, and that's why they were trying to silence us. So we did not break any Tanzanian laws. It's just that Chama cha Maovu, CCM, was afraid of our voices speaking on Tundu Lissu's issue.
So, of course, after all of this, there's been huge uproar all over the place, Bonnie, and folks have started to ask questions. And I think one thing that comes up very clear here is why anybody might think, or why do you think that there has been this very loud silence from government in terms of what happened to one of its own citizens?
I think our government was happy it happened to me. For them, it was good riddance. And also for even Uganda's government, because even Muhoozi, who is the CDF, in charge of the military in Uganda, was happy what happened to Agatha. I think our government sees us troublemakers in our countries, and so they were happy that another country was trying to get rid of us. And that's why I think that's the silence, because they know that the work we do is very important. And so if there's someone else who can try and break our spirit, they're happy for that. That's why the government is very silent. I think if what happened to me happened to a politician in our country, to be discussed in parliament, in state house, and everywhere else. But because I'm a citizen who tries to hold the government accountable, then they're happy that evil has happened to me.
Bonnie, I I am really wondering what saved your life, because from how the parliamentarians are talking, from how I know Tanzanians have handled their own citizens, and you're right when you say that they do weaponize sexual violence. It is not the first time I've heard about it. What saved your life? What do you think made them get to that decision where they let you and Agatha go?
East Africans saved our lives. Kenyans went to the streets. They went to Foreign Affairs Ministry. They went to Tanzanian embassy. And then the noise from ordinary Kenyans that saved our lives, because the free Agatha, free Boniface Mongi was not a government job. It was a Kenyan. It was just ordinary citizens speaking on our behalf. So it's actually your voices that actually saved our lives. The stories that you guys published, the discussion that you guys had on your radio shows saved our lives. There were some people out here fighting for us. And because we were picked so publicly, they realized they couldn't get rid of us. But I think if I had been picked that night in my hotel and gone quietly, I would never have been found.
So finally, because I know that, to have to rehash this over and over again is not an easy thing to do, but you've obviously realized that it's important to speak out. And that's one of the things that we have in terms of strength, isn't it? To speak out. That's why we do programs like this. That's why we say it's important to talk and have conversations. Moving forward, obviously, that it's not going to be easy to do, like you've said, but that there is a